politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of compassion
But America,
and love are right.
we are not going back.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Raise Red Living Blue podcast. I'm your host, Jason Will, joined today by Stephanie LaFleur.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
And you may also know Stephanie as, is it just Pixie on TikTok or is it Glitter Pixie?
My @ is Glitter Pixie, and most people just know me as Pixie.
As Pixie. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's start there and just kind of unpack why or what motivated you to start like speaking out, because I mean, you're a woman of very strong opinions on TikTok, and it's really garnered quite a following. That's your biggest platform, right? Or is that your most?
Yeah, that is my biggest platform. It kind of started years ago. I just randomly decided to start making TikToks about like charities you should support or shouldn't support and why. And I kind of ran into some issues with insurance and covering autism diagnosis for my son. And I was like, okay, let me give this a shot. Let me see if I can actually build a following and make a little extra income on it. I had a friend kind of boost my content, help me out. He's a really big creator on there. And I found that I had really strong opinions specifically about Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah.
I am not one to tolerate a fool very easily, and he is really good at being a fool. So that just kind of motivated me to start speaking out against him, the hateful rhetoric that he pushes. And one thing led to another, and I just kind of accidentally became an activist. It's my accidental activism.
Yeah. Well, I was doing another podcast the other day, and I didn't mention you by name, but I said, I'm really excited about this interview I got coming up with this content creator, and she despises Tuberville, and they immediately knew who it was. So, I mean, you've definitely established that brand of resistance against him. But is that what you try to talk about, things that are specific to Alabama? Do you get involved in the national conversation on topics like war in Iran and stuff like that?
I do, and I have very strong opinions about a lot of things. Our current administration, what they're doing, the fact that we were promised no more wars and we're being drugged into another war. So I do speak on it. I just find that most of my following is from Alabama, and we are affected daily by what's going on in our state alone. So, I try to cover things that most other people don't cover, bills that are going into effect, something else Tuberville has said that made us look a fool, things like that. So I try to stick to my usual local content, but I do get out and about other things as well.
Well, it can come with a cost.
Mhm.
So I guess, did you discuss this with your husband and you guys talk about the potential for losing friends or having career opportunities damaged, anything like that?
Yes, some. I've been talking about a friend of mine who was shot by police in Sims, and my husband works with him, and their business it has to be apolitical. They cannot discuss politics. He's a mechanic. So I never bring up the shop name specifically unless I'm talking about his case. He supports me in everything I do. He is the babysitter while I go out to protests and things like that. He's the one who keeps the kid. So we did have some discussion about it, and it was more along the lines of what our lives are going to look like versus getting permission or getting the okay to do it.
Yeah. I mean, did you feel like you had no choice in a way?
Yeah. Basically, I can't sit idly by. I've never been one to sit idly by while bad things are happening. I've never been one to keep my mouth shut. Now it's just on kind of a bigger level.
Well, I think it's a good segue into your Raise Red Living Blue story, and just how I'm fascinated to learn more about how this has kind of impacted your family dynamic, kind of the greater, like outside your household.
Yeah. So I'll lead with my fun fact about me. My uncle was retired now. He was an evangelical preacher of a non-denominational church in Louisiana, televangelist, and he was trained by Joel Osteen's parents.
Good grief.
Yeah, so I don't really speak to that side of my family anymore. I made that decision. I've gone mostly no contact with them. I still have a lot of trauma surrounding religion and a lot of deconstructing to do. My dad is a firm supporter of MAGA, the MAGA movement, spreading the conspiracy theories that go along with that. So I choose not to be around it. It negatively affects my mental health. It sets a very bad precedent for my children, and I want to raise them to be empathetic, caring humans. So I kind of stopped talking to all of them. I have a couple of sisters that are more liberal minded, and I still speak with them on a pretty much daily basis, but I have very little contact with the majority of my family.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way you framed it because, and just in terms of the damage that it can do to you personally and, the ripple effect it can have, with your kids. The whole reason that your father is the way he is because that's how he was raised. That's what he was exposed to. And really, it's a lack of exposure, probably. I mean, he hasn't, seen or been exposed to a lot of different cultures and things like that. So he's just very narrow-minded.
Yeah. He worked my whole life in the oil field. So he was around a very specific type of person. And he did travel to other countries. I know Egypt was one, Angola was one, but he wasn't exposed to the people in those countries. He wasn't exposed to what those people deal with on a daily basis. He was exposed to other people who acted like him, thought like him, were from the same area of Louisiana or, at the time where he lived in Texas as him. They didn't have access to the information that we have access to today. And I think that made a huge difference in, my upbringing versus his.
Yeah. And so, do you still have MAGA friends or are you pretty totally or just trying to close yourself off from those folks?
I do not have MAGA friends. I have Republican friends. I have sensible Republican friends. I think building an echo chamber around yourself is not healthy. Those friends, we can speak to each other kind of respectfully, and we can see why we feel the way we feel and, explain our point of view. And there are some people that I've convinced to agree with me on what they would consider liberal topics that aren't exactly liberal. They're kind of human rights, so no, I don't have MAGA friends. I would rather avoid them, but that doesn't mean that all of my friends are only progressive and as progressive as me.
Yeah, that's great. And I know it's such a key distinction that you made between the MAGA and the traditional Republican or sensible
Yeah.
Republican. There are some of those left, which, MAGA condemns. So as soon as you come out and speak sensibly about issues and topics of the day, you're immediately labeled a rhino or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to me that, somebody like Mike Pence, who I've never really been a fan of, but he's sticking true to his sensible Republican principles and, speaking truth about really what's going on. And, he's just a total outcast. But from him to Mitch McConnell, I mean, these people that have given their entire lives, have been instrumental, really, the MAGA movement. Really, I mean, they've emboldened it, they've empowered it, and then as soon as they're like, "Hey, this is a bridge too far," they're just cut off. It's
Yeah,
amazing that their people can't see that there's something wrong about that.
yeah, it's wild to me, and they are essentially creating an echo chamber around them. They don't want to hear sensible or reasonable. They don't want to hear anything that does not fall out of their cult leaders' point of view. Any challenge to what he says or does is seen as a complete abandonment of the Republican Party, which I think is silly. One man is not the Republican Party. So yeah, I think it's kind of wild that they're so quick to turn on and abandon those that don't see exactly eye to eye with them. And that's one of the reasons like I've worked to maintain friends with different points of view than me, is because I don't want to be that narrow-minded echo chamber.
And it can happen. So, gosh, you made some really good points. I think for people on both the right and the left to consider about staying in a position of curiosity and not judgment, having a respectful, open debate with people that have differing opinions.
Yeah.
What about you personally? So you're raised red. When did your opinions start to change? When did you start to notice that maybe I'm not on the right team?
So probably honestly, as long as I can remember. One of the last conversations I had with my uncle, we were disagreeing, but he praised me for the fact that I was always curious. I always wanted to get to the root of the reason. I wanted to know the facts. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know everything about a topic before I made a judgment call on it. So it's kind of always been there. I considered myself very apolitical until 2016.
Mm.
I didn't have an opinion. It didn't affect me. I wasn't adult enough to participate in it. So 2016 was kind of really my turning point into becoming a full-blown progressive person. Before that, I had always been curious. It's why I left the church to begin with, is because the answers they were giving me weren't enough. They didn't ring true. Their actions didn't align with what they were preaching from the pulpit. And so it's always been there. It was just kind of waiting for a catalyst. And I guess the 2016 elections were that catalyst.
Wow. I guess because I think about back to 2016 and just how like social media, particularly Facebook, the news feed was just flooded with garbage. And then you saw all these people, or at least I saw all these people that I respected. I was like, gosh, like how could they not see that this is a con?
Yeah.
So it was a very troubling time. And then, you start to distance yourself from people on, maybe it starts with an unfollow, then maybe it goes to an unfriend. But, I just can remember being baffled at like their reaction to January 6th, and
Yeah.
just blown away. Just like, what's like, we're watching the same stuff. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
How do you make
And
sense of it?
it's so funny. By then, most of the people that that still knew me that were MAGA, I had actually gone into labor on January 6th and was in
Oh
the
my God.
hospital. Yeah. and had my son the next day. So I kind of shut off social media to avoid it. But by then, most of the people who knew me that were MAGA kind of had stepped away. They knew that my opinions were going to be loud and they were not going to be nice. I am kind. I am not nice. So I would tell them exactly what I've thought of any hateful rhetoric or, just insane behavior that was potentially harmful to humans as a whole. I think the COVID era really kind of, January 6th, the COVID era, all kind of just really put a line in the sand for me. And I was like, if you're not willing to be a good person considering this, then you're not a person I want to be around. And I made it very well known. And so most of them backed away. I not once, unfriended somebody for an argument that I usually started. I would wait till they blocked or unfriended me. They were going to hear my opinions. I've mellowed out a lot since then, though.
Yeah. Well, their position is that you're on the side of evil.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, you're like, hey, if you're not willing to be a decent person, I don't want to be your friend, or I don't want to associate with you. I don't want that negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it interesting to you that like they feel like you're the one who's the problem?
It's funny to me when they call me baby killer or, whatever hateful words they decide to use, when all I'm fighting for is healthcare for those babies, a livable wage for their parents so that they don't have to end a pregnancy. Everything I'm fighting for is to benefit other people. I'm an average middle class white woman. I'm going to be okay no
Yeah.
matter what. I will be fine, but I know others will not. And I've seen, my mom passed away when I was very young from a lack of health care. I've seen what it does to families. I've been in that position. It's not going to affect me now, but it's painful to watch others have to go through that. And everything I'm fighting for is to benefit humanity as a whole, where they see that as evil and wrong, like feeding the hungry, finding, mental health services and shelters for the homeless is wrong when that's literally what their God preaches.
I mean, that's one of the things. There's been so many aspects of this that I've struggled with to make sense out of, but this recent war on empathy really stands out to me because it's exactly what you said. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you not see that, let's say, Jesus as a historical character, whether he was divine or not, an argument can be made that he was one of the more empathetic humans that ever walked the earth.
Yeah. I like to say that Jesus was a socialist.
Well, yeah, I do too. But he absolutely was.
Yeah, he fed people. He healed the sick. If you're going by the stories in their Bible, he everything he did, he whipped the wealthy. He flipped tables of merchants in the temples. He was anti-capitalist. He was pro, feeding those who were less fortunate, not to mention he was an immigrant, so
Right.
everything they hate about anybody else, which I find ironic. That's one of the reasons I stepped away from the church. That's what I mean when I say they weren't practicing what they preach. They want to hate immigrants and think it's okay for ICE to kidnap people off the streets. What if one of them is Jesus,
Right. I mean, gosh, that's such a good point. It leaves where they are believing in this white Jesus who's like a suburbanite AR-15 wielding, hate-filled, non-empathetic capitalist who, just wants everybody to make as much money as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, he was poor. He hung out with the sinners and the whores,
Yeah,
whereas they want them killed or, put behind bars, or rather than saving them, they want to end their existence so that they can, you know, continue to, I don't know, be wealthy and not have to see the ugly side of the world. I'm not even really sure how they get to the point that they get to logically.
well, this is interesting. Are you following the news out of Tennessee and their legislature working on a bill to a make abortion a crime punishable by death?
Yeah.
So you meant
Yeah.
like when you mentioned like Jesus hung out, like, we've talked a little bit about abortion and now Jesus and the whores and all this, but it's like, oh my God,
It's insane.
that's
It
barbarism.
it is, because and it's such a slippery slope. I have a medical condition that causes me to have spontaneous abortions due to a lack of folic acid. How can I prove that I did everything I could to save this pregnancy? It wasn't, something I chose to have. I didn't, nobody chooses to have an abortion lightheartedly. It's not, they're not going out and just having them on the weekends for fun, so the fact that they're trying to criminalize poverty and lack of education that they, refuse to fund, and it feels very much like a war on women specifically when you have a bill worded the way it's worded, and it's very terrifying that somebody could just naturally have a spontaneous abortion due to a folic acid deficiency. And they could then potentially have to be in front of a jury of their peers and explain their medical history and try to convince these people that they didn't do it willingly. It was something that just happened because their body is lacking folic acid.
I mean, it's crazy. Like you couldn't, if that were to become law, I mean, you couldn't move to Tennessee. I
No.
mean, if you had, let's say you had some kind of great opportunity for your family, you'd have to pass that up. But I could see, given the hate that spews out of Tuberville's mouth and the divisiveness, I could see him jumping all over that.
Oh yeah, he would probably be first in line. If he knew how to introduce a bill, he would probably introduce it into Alabama legislature tomorrow.
Well, do your sensible traditional Republican friends, do they support him?
No, most of them think he's too stupid to be in politics. One friend of mine who's definitely anti-socialism. He does not believe socialism can work. He will still get out and help people, but he's a Republican and refuses to vote. He said Tommy Tuberville wasn't even a good football coach. Why would he think he could do anything in legislature? I haven't met a single one that supports him.
Well, that's encouraging news, yeah. I would say. I just, maybe the theme for this podcast is like, this episode is like, just how baffling, the things are right now. But we've got somebody who, have you dug a lot into the residency issue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's since being in office, he has spent more time in Florida when he's not in Washington. He has spent more time in Florida than he ever has in Alabama. For some of my videos, I did do research on whether or not he voted, which I'd never actually found a clear answer to, whether or not he was registered to vote in Alabama. I think he was registered to vote, but whether or not he actually voted was still up for debate. I did a little digging into the residency and he doesn't even go here.
Yeah. I mean, he stays at his son's house when he's in town or, because it's a short drive. It's not a bad drive from Montgomery to Auburn. The majority of Alabamians seem to be voting against their own interests. And you've got a person who's running, who's not a resident, who has a failed record as a senator, doesn't understand how government works, the three branches of government, the Constitution, but he's a rubber stamper of the policies that come out of the White House. And in Alabama, it seems like, I don't know, there was some articles, some reporting out about how the Trump endorsement is not what it was, but it is still impactful in our state, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, they seem to kind of vote for whoever Trump says is a good candidate, which is wild to me, rather than researching. The do your own research crowd refuses to do their own research and see his track record. The only thing he has succeeded at while being in Senate is becoming wealthy. I want to say last time I looked, his wealth had gone from around 3 million to around 12 million. And the majority of his trading is done in areas that he directly impacts with his committee seats. But if they look at the bills he's been a part of, it's not a great track record. He's not intelligent. He does not know anything about how the government works. He's proven that to us time and time again. All he is a mouthpiece for the hateful. He is the only thing he has done is make money and spew hateful rhetoric to the people who want to hear it.
Yeah, he's definitely a grifter. But, it's not probably fair to say they all do it, but both sides do it. I don't think, Nancy Pelosi was singled out by the president in the State of the Union address. I don't think she did a terrific job defending that when she was interviewed. She just kind of brushed it off, but I would have liked for her to say, yeah, I benefited. Yeah, I've done some trading based on, maybe not insider information, but I'm privy to things other people are not. And so I've used that to my advantage. If we want to do something about it, let's get behind this law and pass it.
Hey, fellow Blue Dots, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Raised Red Living Blue. Okay, back to the episode.
Do you follow Scott Galloway? Most people don't, but
I don't. I have. I'll
he's
have to look.
got he's got a great podcast, Raging Moderates, with Jessica Tarloff, who's on the Five at Fox News. But he suggested that we should just pay these people more. If we paid them like $1 million a year, there would be an incentive maybe for them not to grift, and then also limit them from being in office past the age of 70.
I don't think paying them more is going to be the answer. They already make way more than your average American. I honestly think that they should make minimum wage. They're the ones who set the minimum wage, make it a living wage, and we won't have any problems. I don't think they should be allowed to trade while in office, and I think there should be term limits and definitely age limits. If you're not going to live long enough to see the bills that you're introducing actually take effect, you shouldn't be able to introduce them. It's that simple.
It infuriates me because they're like the party, or they want to be. They want to position themselves as the party of common sense, when everything you just said is or would be under my definition of common sense.
Yeah. It's wild to me that it's the cognitive dissonance is just so astounding these days that I just don't even, I'm baffled.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they don't want common sense policies. Things like universal health care. They've proven that universal health care saves all Americans money, or saves an entire country money. It is going to be cheaper to have universal healthcare than it is privatized healthcare. Other countries have proven that it works and it's true, but they don't want to see that because they're not personally, I have insurance. I'm not going to personally benefit from universal healthcare. So why should I pay for other people's healthcare? And, it's just kind of wild to me that they don't see common sense as common sense anymore.
Yeah. It's frustrating. I mean, it's like, you can't see with your own eyes, you can't hear, you can't discern. It's freaking crazy is what it is.
Yeah. Their own research is typically either what comes directly out of the president's mouth, which is 9 times out of 10 going to be factually incorrect, or some random guy on YouTube who spews conspiracy theories and says he knows everything. He knows all this insider information. They don't actually look into other countries that have these policies, or, research historically these policies. They just believe what other people say. And I can't imagine the level of, I think, fear that led to them shutting down so much that they refuse to listen to truth about anything.
Well, that's that's their biggest strategy, I think, is the politics of fear. And it's been that way for decades. But I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a lot of right-wing Facebook pages, groups, content creators, all like cheering because the ratings came out for the most prominent of the cable news outlets, and Fox beat MSN, or MS Now, which is MSNBC, which is now MS Now, and CNN combined. So I took that to AI and I said, doesn't this frustrate you too? Like, we've got so much information at our fingertips now. Like,
Yeah.
you can literally, if you see a meme, a graphic, a post, a news headline, put it into AI, you can actually put the link to the article in like Gemini and say, hey, fact check this for me. And it'll say what's accurate and what's not.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to me, and I haven't done it. I'm going to, but you could go into AI and say, I need an unbiased view on Tommy Tuberville and whether or not what would make him a good candidate or a bad candidate. And I already know what'll make him a bad candidate. I've been preaching on it for over a year now.
And I want to hear all about that here in just a minute.
Yeah, and you can get an unbiased view. You can then it provides links to prove what it's telling you. And people just don't use the tools that are available to them because they don't want their mindset challenged even a little bit. They don't want to think for themselves.
Well, this has been my experience. I'm curious to see if you've had a similar experience. But so you're primarily on TikTok. I'm primarily using Facebook. On Facebook, anybody on the right that is going to challenge me can never bring a source, can never bring an article, or I'll say, where'd you get that information? They can never provide it, or they don't ever want to provide it. Do you kind of get engaged with your haters, or do you not get into the comments?
So I mostly engage with the people that are, kind of believe the same way as me. I tend to only be on their algorithms for the most part. Every now and then, though, I will get over to some left-sided TikTok, and they don't actually bring facts usually, or facts, what they believe to be facts. They don't make anything that would make me stop and ask them to cite a source. I am on Facebook personally, and when I, usually when I see a comment like that, I reply, "Okay, what's your source on this? I'd love to learn more." I get cussed out usually.
Well,
On
what they
TikTok,
tell
I'm really
me, oh, sorry to
hate.
interrupt, but what they tell me is you go find it. You're lazy. You go find it. And I'm like,
Uh,
I'm the one that cited sources in my original post.
no, they bear the burden of proof. If you make a fact or a statement as a fact, you bear the burden of proof.
Crazy.
If you give me something and I say, "Hey, I can't find the truth in this. Can you tell me where you found it?" Like, maybe that should make you stop and think. But sadly, that's not where we're at.
Maybe you should stop and think if there's two news outlets, two 24-hour news outlets that have this a similar perspective, and then all the other news outlets have a, like I would say, are in reality.
Mhm.
But you got these two in Fox and Newsmax that, are like propaganda state TV. And the other thing that we're not bringing up is that when Fox News settled that massive lawsuit for 787 million or whatever it was, that they, like Rupert Murdoch in court records admitted, it's a matter of court record, that his on-air personalities were misrepresenting facts. I mean, that is documented, and it's
Yeah,
accessible to anybody that wants to read it, but they just choose not
it
to.
it challenges their point of view, and they have built their entire existence around their belief system. And I understand, growing up religious, I understand having that belief system challenged can be very difficult. I think what makes you a decent human being is looking at those challenges, seeing if they're valid, doing your own research, actual research, and changing your point of view or your beliefs if you find information that supports a new belief. It's kind of silly to me that people just outright don't want to. And again, I know it comes from a place of fear, but you can't live like that. That's a horrible way of living. Constantly afraid that the libs are going to do something, or I can't imagine living with that much fear.
Yeah, your husband's going to be turned gay, if he goes on a work trip to San Francisco or something. It's like, give me a break. So let's do this. So let's just pretend that I'm not a diehard Tuberville fan, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to vote for him because, what's the other alternative? There isn't really one. What would you say to me? And if we're just having a cup of coffee and I go, Stephanie, what's your thoughts on this? Like, who are you voting for and why? Or why should I
So,
not vote for Tuberville?
yeah,
Why are you not voting for him?
I am not voting for him for a number of reasons. I think for somebody who wants to vote for him, probably a Republican, the first thing I would tell them is he has used our military personnel for political leverage. That alone should be a non starter. The Republicans care about our military. They want to support our troops, right? Why would they support somebody who blocked military promotions for over a year, who threatened national security, or almost a year, I believe, for months at a time, harmed military families over a military policy that has always kind of been in place? It would never personally affect him. All it would affect are military members. So why would you vote for somebody who so clearly hates our military? It
Good
would
point.
always be my first point. I mean, I have quite a few. He hasn't done the job, obviously. He has been mostly non-existent to his constituents. He has not made any real impact on the average Alabama person's life. He has not introduced legislature that actually helps the people of Alabama. He has not listened to the people of Alabama. And he has ignored things that are actively harming the people of Alabama. We could go on and on about healthcare and the closure of hospitals in Alabama. What has he done for that? The outrageous rent costs, cost of living going up, and the notoriously low wages in Alabama. He has done nothing. I want to say we're the worst for maternal mortality. For the party that calls me a baby killer, why are they allowing children and women to die from what should just be, an easy average birth? But due to a lack of health care, and most especially maternal health care, they're not making it out. And he has done nothing to benefit the American citizens. So, as a senator, as a lawmaker, what is he going to do for us as governor? Just sign anything that's put in front of him? We've had that for the past how many years with Ivy? It hasn't benefited us. So I think it's time to try something new, a candidate who listens.
I don't even hear him addressing these things. And here's what I think the reason why is that he feels like these problems that you mentioned are Democrat problems. He doesn't understand that, let's say, there is this very real issue out there that is commonly referred to as the MAGA poor. But 35 to 37% of SNAP beneficiaries in Alabama are white. But listen, here's an article. I'll give you an example of him drawing this line in the sand over Democrat versus Republican. But here's a Yellowhammer News headline: Senator Tuberville and Speaker Ledbetter uniting behind proposal to close Alabama party primaries. Here's a direct quote from Tuberville: Democrats shouldn't be voting in our elections. So he's definitely not going to be a governor for all Alabamians. He's only going to be a governor for Republican Alabamians, and doesn't realize that he's alienating a lot of his own supporters or would-be supporters through these policies that are not creating a better quality of life.
I mean, and that's so wild. I actually heard that he said that, and I hadn't had time to look into it. So I'm glad to actually have the story. But he is actively attacking our civil rights. And if you think the suppression is going to stop with people who are registered as Democrats, you're sadly mistaken. He's going to start with things that he can, it's the old poem, first they came for. And he is coming for Democrats because he knows he can turn his followers against Democrats specifically. And talking about taking away one of our rights as American citizens is wild behavior. So I can't even imagine that people still support him after saying something like that. I just don't get it.
It's feeding them red meat. It's like, it's it's just the power of their playbook, and how this demonization has just been so incredibly effective that, he'll say whatever he wants. But, when he came out and he wanted to If he had his way, there would be not a single Muslim resident of the state of Alabama,
Yeah.
much less, the United States. But wanting to ban Sharia law, that is very clearly against the First Amendment of the Constitution. So it should be immediately disqualifying that we got somebody running for governor that doesn't understand the Constitution of the United States, much less the Constitution of Alabama. And it's probably, if he's concerned about any Constitution at all, it's the Constitution of the state of Florida.
Yeah. Let Florida have him. Please go run in Florida. I am begging you.
Yeah.
Go be the Florida man you've always been. Live in your multi-million-dollar mansion on Santa Rosa Beach and have fun. Let them have him. We don't want him. And it's really wild to me that they want to create laws based on Leviticus, but they don't. They want to, I guess, outlaw Sharia law altogether.
Yes.
And they're not that different. If you've read them both, they're not that different. So what do you mean you want to ban an entire religion? That's illegal. That's unconstitutional. We've proven it time and time again.
Yeah, it's un-American.
Yeah.
I mean, freedom of religion was a pretty big catalyst for even the creation of this country.
If by some chance T-Tubbs does actually win the governor's seat, it is going to absolutely worsen economy in Alabama. We're already struggling to get investors to open companies here in Alabama. It's just going to get worse with somebody like him, somebody as just blatantly hateful and ignorant as him, essentially being, the head guy of Alabama. Companies with any sense of intelligence are not going to want to do that. It's going to get a lot worse here if he wins.
Well, here's the baffling uphill battle, because you said if he wins, and the odds are he will, because look at this. I mean, before A.J. McCarron dropped out to become a football coach himself, was the prime contender to be the lieutenant governor. We were going to have the Iron Bowl in Montgomery, the State House in Montgomery, Tubbs and McCarron.
Somebody who hadn't even voted before. Somebody who has never been registered to vote. The fact that was who people were banking on is absolutely insane to me. The democratic process is not something that happens to you. It is something you actively have to be involved in if you want to make a difference. And he just went from never having voted to deciding he was going to run for lieutenant governor. That was just insane. And
but that just shows you what we're up against.
Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. And I know I'm fighting like hell. I know Will Boyd is fighting like hell. We're doing everything we can to give us a chance. But it's very disheartening to know that it's likely all going to be for nothing, and he's still going to win. But, I guess then he'll be in Alabama more, and hopefully he'll see me making fun of him, I guess.
Hey, fellow Blue Dots, don't forget you can find all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please hit that subscribe button, and we would love a review. Okay, now back to the episode.
You've really given me a lot to think about as a hypothetical Tuberville voter. So now I'm like, all right, Stephanie, well, if it's not Tubbs, who is it? Why should I consider Will Boyd?
So Will Boyd likes to give me credit for kicking his campaign off on TikTok. His platform did all that. I just said his platform. But Will is definitely listening. He spent all Monday before Mardi Gras downtown, walking up and down, listening to the people of Mobile and what was important to them. He talked to them about his platform. He handed out information about his platform. But Will listens to every person. And if he doesn't have an answer, he does actual research, because he is a very intelligent man, and comes up with an answer. And Will wants him being in office not to benefit him, but to benefit the everyday average Alabama citizens. Not only that, he wants to, give us access to health care. He wants to give us access to affordable power bills, to cannabis to treat, whatever you may need. It's our choice. He wants to put the choice back in our hands. And I think that's a huge benefit of him, is that he believes that we are adult enough to make our own decisions about our own bodies, regardless of whether it be, access to an abortion or access to a medicine like cannabis. He believes you're smart enough to make your own decisions, and that the law shouldn't prevent you from thriving or, having, or for treating your mental health conditions, or, so he is genuinely a person for the people. He is a candidate for the people. He is, I can't speak good enough about him. I adore that man. Despite him being religious, which for me was kind of almost I wouldn't even look into him because of the religion, because I am still deconstructing what I grew up like.
Yeah.
He fully understands that his religion is not how he should govern. It would go against his religious beliefs to use his religion to govern other people. And I think that's a very admirable quality that we do not see in a whole lot of people these days.
100%. And so what about Doug Jones? So why should I support Will Boyd and not Doug Jones? Now, I am concerned about, I mean, we've already said, like, people over 70 probably shouldn't be in office. Doug's getting up there in age. But what else beyond that? Do you see being his candidacy being problematic?
Approaching this very carefully, because speaking out against Doug Jones can cause a whole lot of problems. To be clear, if Doug Jones wins the primary, I will vote for Doug Jones in the election. Absolutely, I will. Doug is definitely moderate. I think 40 years ago, he would have aligned more with the Republican Party. I don't think he's an actual progressive. My main concern is, I've been told by a lot of people, working class folks who are Democrat through and through, that they see Doug Jones as a loser now. He lost against Tommy Tuberville, and this seems like him kind of trying to get a rematch. That's their words, not mine. But if you think about it, Doug barely won against Roy Moore, a predator, a known predator. Doug also raised millions more than him. If money wins elections, like, he should have won that by a lot more. And then he raised hand over fist above Tommy Tuberville and still lost to him. I don't think Doug is the candidate that people want. And frankly, the Democratic, the SDEC, the ADP, they're not going to support Doug. There's, drama between them and Doug Jones, and they're not going to help his campaign at all. I think we should kind of get behind a candidate that does not have, I guess, trouble with the party and is actually a progressive candidate who can make changes in Alabama rather than just keeping the status quo.
Well, how do you feel about the state of the Democratic Party in Alabama, the leadership of the party in Alabama? Do you see any issues there? I mean, if I go to your Facebook page, I see that you are seeking to be part of that leadership, right?
I am. So District 97 in Mobile, I'm running for the SDEC district seat. The party is a mess. There's been so much infighting and such power struggles that right now the current leadership is just going to keep the party from succeeding in anything. I think one of the main reasons that Alabama is so much the way it is because we do not have a functioning Democratic Party. They have been sanctioned 4 times, I believe, since like 2018, 2019,
Wow.
3 or 4 times. They've lost funding. I've personally watched them go against bylaws in their meetings. It needs reform. And I'm running as a reformist. I'm fighting for transparency, because right now, no average person can tell me when or where the state Democratic Executive Committee meets. Nobody even knows who they are or what they do. When they are supposed to be the backbone of the Democratic Party, they're supposed to represent all of the progressives in Alabama. They're supposed to recruit candidates. They're supposed to help fund candidates, help campaign for candidates. And they're doing none of that. I heard from one woman who was going to run for office, tried to get help from the state Democratic Executive Committee, and just decided it wasn't worth the fight. It was too big of a battle to try and get their help. So she just didn't run. And the seat that she ran for went unopposed by a Republican.
Wow.
Or by a Democrat. It was won by a Republican. No vote needed. Like they were the only candidate. So it's kind of a shell of what it used to be. It is not helpful to anybody. And we can do better. So, there are quite a few of us on the ballot who are running for reform, transparency, tools, accessibility for average Alabama citizens to know what's going on in the party, know how they can help, and potentially join the SDEC. One of the problems that I noticed is that making quorum isn't even easy for them. And, they've actually tried to change bylaws and move forward with meetings without ever having made quorum. If you know Robert's rules, you don't do anything without a majority vote. And if the majority isn't there, there's a problem. When you get, I think, 2 weeks heads up that there's going to be a meeting that's going to take up 2 full days of your weekend, and it's going to be hours away, that's not possible for most people. That's not accessible for most people.
Well, I'm following what's going on in Texas a little bit. There seems to be some pretty data-driven hope that, gosh, that state could turn blue with some of its elections. And we're seeing this happen in states like Mississippi, seats that have been held by Republicans for decades flip.
Yeah.
And you like Alabama, Texas is pretty darn red, but I think that shows the dysfunction of the reality of the dysfunction of the Democratic Party in our state, because they're not capitalizing on all of these incredibly bad policies if you just Google red states versus blue states, that's an eye-opening little easy bit of research you can do. But there's no way whoever the Texas version of A.J. McCarron, I think, would have a hope and a prayer of just entering the race and suddenly being, the top contender for that elected office.
Absolutely not. And it's wild, and good on Mississippi for breaking the supermajority. Like, that's amazing. I had hopes that we would be able to this year. And as we get closer and closer to it, it would take a miracle. It is possible. It's not completely impossible, but without a functioning Democratic Party, it's never going to happen. Joe Reed is fighting the same villains that he sees, or that he saw during the civil rights movements, the Dixiecrats. He is so obsessed with the power that he doesn't want to lose, and I know he's not head of the SDEC anymore. Kelly is now, who is a good friend of Joe Reed's, and I call him his lapdog.
Right.
And he's so stuck in a battle against the Dixiecrats to this day that he is actively destroying any chance we have to capitalize on the movement, the blue wave that's been happening across Alabama, because we're out here, we're connecting, we're building community. I know so many candidates from across the state that have reached out to me just because they saw me hating on Tuberville.
Yeah.
And we all support each other, but without that support from the SDEC, we're not going to get where we need to be. Maybe next election cycle, it'll be better. I'm hoping enough reformists win that we can change the way the party is run, change the leadership out for younger leadership who is more interested in fixing Alabama than fighting amongst themselves. And, we really make an impact in Alabama next election cycle.
Powerful statement. All right. So how can people in Mobile County learn more about Stephanie? Are you doing any kind of speaking events? You have a website? What's going on there?
I do have a website. It just got put up, I think, yesterday. I just got it. A friend of mine made it for me. She finished it yesterday. That is kind of circulating out in my neighborhood groups, on my personal Facebook. I am planning on, after this, my next course of action was to create a public Facebook account for my election.
Nice.
So yeah, look me up on there, Stephanie LaFleur, District 97, and I'll include what my vision for the future of the Alabama Democrats are, and what my platform is, and a little bit about me and what I do on a day-to-day basis.
And let's give them the TikTok handle again so they can deep dive in all that good content.
So it's Glitter Pixies, spelled a little weird. So it's at GLYTERPIXIE.
Well, thanks so much for doing this, making time to do this on a Sunday, because you are a mom and you have a family, and special arrangements had to be made so that you could have some peace and quiet for an hour to do one of these interviews. So I think people should take note of that, the fact that you do so much, use so much of your own time and resources, and you're not getting anything really in return. You're doing this because you care about Alabama.
Yeah, it did start out as a way to kind of make a little extra money. I realized the money you can make from TikTok is not great. So it wasn't going to help. And I just I kept doing it because I saw the impact it was making on people. And most importantly, I saw the community that it was building. So yeah, I do it to build community, even if it's not going to be somebody that I know personally I spend every day with. They're going to find people to connect with who are like them and who just want to make a better Alabama.
God, I love it. What a great way to end. Thank you so much for doing this, and really good luck to you in your election.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.